Hello and welcome to Hello Yelloe. As those of you who know and have listened before, you're very privileged to be here in the company of those people who've been through some adversity and who are more than happy to share their authentic stories about how they got through it and how you too might be sitting there struggling, thinking about how can I get there? How can I get to be the best version of myself? And today we are in no better company than with Kimberley Holden, who is the co-founder of Dr. V Healthy Energy Drinks. Welcome to the program, Kimberley.
Thank you, Viv.
Thank you so much for coming along today. Now, it's no secret I've known you for a number of years as we've worked together with the Dr. V energy drink brand.
Yep.
But what I'm more interested in is about how it came to be. I mean, obviously there's lots of energy drinks on the market. It's well known that some of them are quite dangerous if not consumed properly, and you know, you've got a really, really interesting story to be told as to how it all came to be. So tell us from the beginning what inspired it.
Well, actually, from the beginning, it's a long, boring story
about
a short, boring woman. I would say, but you know, well, to cut a sort of a long, boring story short, I've always been, you know, I've always worked and done a whole range of things. And I ended up with my own factory in a sort of heavy industrial environment in Western Sydney. So I did that for sort of about 15 years. And towards the end of that, I was diagnosed with a brain tumour. So it wasn't actually cancerous or anything, but it was just very big. So it was sort of the size of my fist. And
so you had a brain tumour the size of your fist?
Yes, in this head,
little beautiful, gorgeous head. Yeah.
Yes.
You've started. You're in a warehouse in Western Sydney. So you'd already started the process of this energy drink, or no?
No. By that, at that time, I was sort of, I think, the only North Shore housewife in Sydney to have a factory was out near Liverpool, and I had 40 boiler makers and welders all working for me. We had a very, a really thriving sort of industrial business.
What were you making?
Well, we were predominantly, it might seem boring to you, but
it's not boring. We're here to listen.
It was predominantly metal expansion joints, and then we were able to expand that into anything that required sort of specialised welding techniques.
Amazing.
So it was sort of fine gauge welding using fine gauge stainless steel. So it was very strange for a North Shore housewife, but anyhow.
How did you get into that, just out of interest?
Well, that's another long, boring story.
Well, no, give me the short version.
Well, I had been actually up in Asia with my husband, who you know, Angus, and I, up there, had been working for Singapore Telecom, and I had the most amazing job. It was fantastic. You know, I was working in their international division, roaming around Southeast Asia, sort of flying into Colombo to negotiate a contract, and then flying off to Manila to do a pricing strategy or something. So it was really fun and really happy, good times. And then and I had 2 little kids, and Angus said, well, for his job we had to move back to Australia. So I came back, and I think, he travelled a lot. So I realised that I couldn't really keep on going with a sort of a corporate job without all the, while living in Sydney.
Yes, of course.
So
young children at the same time.
And young children, and a husband that travelled so much.
Yeah. So something had to give.
Something had to give. So I decided to buy myself a job, and so I looked at a whole lot of different businesses, actually. Looked at mango plantations, at downlight manufacturers, at styrofoam surfboard manufacturers, all these things. But I eventually settled on, for one reason or another, this business out in Western Sydney that made metal expansion joints.
And the rationale for that, was it just a P&L decision, or?
Well, I think I'd always wanted to, well, throughout my career, I'd always worked for somebody else, dipping my toe into operations and then reverting from there back to head office and, looking at P&Ls and balance sheets and things. And I realised that actually I really, really loved, rolling my sleeves up and getting dirty. And, I'd kind of always been in a sort of a corporate environment, knocking heads against other men and women with similar backgrounds. And I just felt like it was time to do something different.
Completely
and maybe to
different,
make a difference. I think that was why I really wanted to do it, was just so that I could go to bed at night and think, well, actually invested in Australian manufacturing, maybe I saved a few jobs, maybe, helped a few apprentices to get on with their career, or, whatever it was. But to me, that was sort of much more fulfilling than, I don't know, working with bankers downtown.
And I can totally understand that, because manufacturing at that time, I'm sure, wasn't as abundant as it was, say, 20, 30 years
Absolutely.
prior.
Absolutely. It was already in massive decline. And then we had the added problem of the mining boom was taking a lot of the skilled labour, and was also therefore increasing the costs as well. So it was a very tricky time, but really very, very fun, fulfilling. I just loved it. But then towards the end of my time there, I had this brain tumour.
So you've got this manufacturing business
Yes.
that you've bought because you're thinking you're making a difference, and it's actually so different to being in the corporate world, and it's giving you a little bit of a vigour and an alignment with a value base. And you've got 2 young children at the time still.
By then I had a third.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what's happening to you? Talk to me about what's happening to you before you found out about your brain tumour.
Well, just busy, working, busy mum. I mean, you know what that's like. It's just, I was just busy. And I probably also was kind of really very stressed at that time as well. And actually Angus then had moved back up to Singapore for his job, so we had 2 kids up there, one in boarding school in Sydney, who really, she was not a good candidate for boarding school, that child. And so that was sort of another...
She's a bit like her mum.
I never went to boarding school, so...
No, I meant not the candidate,
My goodness, yes. I don't know how well I would have gone in boarding school, but, it's not for everybody. And, certainly wasn't for her. So we had, it was quite a stressful sort of time in our lives, I have to say.
And can I ask you, how old roughly were you?
I was early 40s, so I think 42 or 43. Right.
So you're running a manufacturing business, you've got 3 children that you're dealing with, running a home as well.
Yes.
Tell me, what are some of the symptoms that you start seeing in this busy day-to-day life?
Oh, well, apart from always being exhausted, I was very dizzy, I had blurred vision, I was so clumsy, I'd sort of fall over, I couldn't be trusted at a dinner party, not to knock over
Was that before or after the 2 bottles of wine that you had?
During, yes. So, yes, and then I'd been to a couple of doctors and they'd said, I had some sort of virus or something, or, whatever it was, but no one ever really, yes, I mean, not that I feel like I was misdiagnosed or anything, but it was just, it took a long time to get to the bottom of it. And then one day I was picking my daughter up from school, and luckily we were in Singapore actually, and she was in this a very big school that had a nurse. And so I drove in and I went to get her, and I sat down, and oh my goodness, I was just felt so sick. I had such a headache. I was just on death's door. And luckily this nurse walked past and said, well, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh my God, I just don't know. Thought I'd gone blind in one eye. I was having lightning flashes. And anyhow, so luckily she was there, and then she just took over, got the wheelchair, got me to hospital, got my husband, all this sort of stuff. So that was great. And the Singapore health system is incredible. So within 20 minutes, I'd had a CAT scan, I was up in the ward, and maybe it wasn't 20 minutes, maybe my memory fails me.
Your best self.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But yes, so I remember the neurosurgeon came in and said, asked to speak to my husband outside, and I thought, oh, that can't be good. But actually by then, luckily, they'd given me a great sort of jab of
some sort of drugs
in my
beautiful
bum.
So you're feeling great.
Feeling fine. So I'd gone from sort of screaming my head off and garbled words and not being able to see properly, to then being quite calm. And then they came back in and said that I had this major brain tumour and they would have to come out. So that was, I think I took it all quite calmly and had the surgery. But the surgery was quite damaging, and then I was having seizures, and really, I forgot how to write. I couldn't speak properly. All these, so it was quite kind of terrible, really. And then I remember I had my 6-month checkup, and I just the morning before walked by myself around the block of our apartment. So I was sort of feeling, I'm really, nailing this. And then I walked into my husband and I walked into the doctor's office, and he was standing there with a white coat and a stick and, up on the x-ray. And I thought, oh dear, this is not good news. And he said they'd left some in there.
Oh, for goodness sake.
So I needed to have a second operation. And it was in this, there's I think it's called superior sagittal sinus, which is I think it's a vein which runs down here, which has, it's about this diameter and the pressure of a garden hose. So it's quite an important little piece of equipment, and it had been blocked by the tumour, so they needed to go in and have it taken out. So anyhow, so then I had to go through the whole thing again, and then yes, but I put that off for a couple of years and eventually had to have that done. So I had it done, and then there were more side effects from that, which predominantly was this terrible fluid on the brain. So about 4 days after my surgery, I just had it was almost like I had no facial features. I looked like some sort of avatar with this big lump of thing on my head. And anyhow, so it was really dealing with that, and then the continuing epilepsy and all that kind of thing. So anyhow, I ended up handing over the reins to my 2IC, who was a great bloke and who I eventually sold the business to. And that was just such a great partnership and a great handover, and now the business it's in such good hands and it's doing really well under his stewardship. So
wonderful.
That's a great story.
So you've gone through, so how from start to end with the tumour, how many years of?
I think it was about 4, maybe, between sort of diagnosis to the end of the second operation, but then quite a few more years of recovery from the second operation. But that's sort of the long, boring bit that gets me to sort of close the circle on your original question, which is how I got started on Dr. V. During the course of my sort of hideousness, post my second surgery, I came into the path or the orbit of this amazing naturopath here in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. And his nickname is Dr. V. So he was a practicing doctor in Eastern Europe, and then when he came out here, of course we we're so superior we can't recognise anybody else's, any other country's medical qualifications. So he just works here as a naturopath, and he really helped me with his little formulations and
in your recovery. So you saw him
in my
for
recovery, yes,
just to help the healing process. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I had seen him before and done some fasting with him before my second operation, but it was really, he just came in and really saved me after the second operation, because I had this terrible fluid on the brain, and it was very debilitating. I mean, it just couldn't even get out of bed really. And my surgeon just said, well, you just have to have this dexamethasone, which is what I think it's what they inject into people on Mount Everest, you know, to stop them from dying. So it's quite strong. Just, you never sleep, you're up all night eating like a maniac, terrible. And just, you know, bouncing off the walls. And so he gave me some herbs and some other sort of little concoctions that really did help me. And, you know, I think actually probably saved me, because it took years what happens is that when they cut this one out, your body makes other pathways for the blood to get around, but it's a very, very slow process. But also, we don't really know how much your is it called venous? I don't know. System impacts your lymphatic system. So that's also how we drain away the excess brain fluid that we have.
Wow.
So boring.
No, it's not boring. It's unreal. Because in the absence of meeting Dr. V, then you wouldn't have understood how important these concoctions were for your health and recovery.
I would have been doomed to a life of being on these really strong steroids. So it was quite a revelation. And I remember when I went back to the neurosurgeon, he was quite dismissive of them and said, oh, you know, they don't work. And I said, well, actually, and luckily my husband was there, because, you know, these people, this guy was a bit sexist.
Yeah.
And, you know, I said, oh, they really work. And it's like, And then my husband said, well, actually, they do work. You know, if she doesn't take them, she swells up like this. If she does, she's fine. And so then, you know, he believed it when a man
said it. Well, it's terrible. Occasionally that still happens. But.
Yes, but regardless of that, they really worked. And he also helped me with a lot of fasting and things that really helped to improve my epilepsy. And I think they're now actually doing a lot of clinical trials with fasting in some of the American university hospitals, because it really is sort of a real possible sort of pathway to
healing.
Maybe, I don't know if it cures it, although it did seem to cure mine, but it can certainly help to alleviate it, I think.
So whilst Dr. V's obviously been absolutely instrumental in your recovery, what elements of those natural herbs have you put into this energy drink, and why an energy drink?
Right. Well, yes, so when I was down there visiting Vargeef one day, you know, I wasn't really doing anything, and I've always been a worker. You know, I've always done something since I was 14. I've always worked. So I said to him, why don't you give me some concoctions and I'll try and commercialise them. So he gave me a whole lot of formulations for supplements and for these natural energy drinks. So they use adaptogenic herbs rather than caffeine and sugar to give you, caffeine and sugar just give you a
high,
a bit of a blast.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's a really the energy drinks on the market, in my opinion, are they're quite sort of they're quite shockingly bad for you, I would say. And as I think you said before, especially if you drink too many, they really can have alarming side effects. But with Dr. V's formulations, they use these adaptogenic herbs, which have been used for centuries in Eastern Europe, to give traditionally or to provide stamina, to help with longevity, to help with some mental fatigue, with stress. They help balance your hormones. And that's what they've been used for traditionally.
So you talk a lot traditionally. So these herbs have been sourced from Eastern. Which parts of Eastern Europe?
Well, actually, all around the Arctic Circle. So they're very common in Eastern Europe, in the Russian sort of or former USSR countries in the former USSR. They're also really commonly used in Scandinavia, Norway, Finland. So and even a lot of our ingredients are also up in Alaska, and they're all sort of grown in these very remote places. So things like sea buckthorn berry, the Schisandra, rowan berry, but also our key ingredient, and the one that Vagif really likes the most, are these pine needle extracts.
Right.
So they're basically from pristine forests, and they extract, well, they boil them up and extract the pine needle essence. And they're really high in vitamin C, vitamin K, manganese, chromium. So they're really, it's sort of like a blast of pure chlorophyll as well. So I know from my own recovery how much they help me. I know that, they became very, very popular, the pine needle teas, during COVID, because they're very good at sort of detoxifying and also helping with respiratory issues.
Okay.
So, in fact, you couldn't get a pine needle for love nor money during the lockdowns.
Wow. So people with the inside story.
Yes.
So the Dr. V energy drinks, are they good for those people who aren't seeking that hit, like not competitors because they don't sit in the same space, but is Dr. V good for other things other than just energy? I mean, what would you recommend?
We have these four formulations which our good doctor put together. So one is for recovery, one is for mental clarity and focus, one is for we call it our sort of happy drink, but it's sort of for mood and helping if you're feeling a little bit flat. We actually also have a workout drink and a collagen. We've added collagen to our range as well.
Oh, fantastic.
But, yes, we're not allowed to make any claims about what these things do, but we're allowed to say...
Only because we're such a highly regulated country.
Well, yes, but also I think it is good to have regulations in these areas. But what we can say is that all these herbs have been used for centuries to help with balance, to help people deal with stress, to help physical and mental stamina. In fact, there's an article I've read in the National Geographic that talks about how they were once used to cheat at the Olympics before they developed anabolic steroids. So it was what all the Eastern Europeans used to use before they were had their event, because just to give them that little extra boost. But now they don't need them anymore because they've got all the synthetic ones.
They've got the lovely synthetic ones to destroy our bodies in other ways.
That's right.
So, I mean, I guess, this show's all about finding opportunity through adversity. Do you think if you hadn't gone through that horrific brain tumour, would you have started this wonderful business?
Oh, no way. God, no way. Well, I would never have come across this amazing human being. Dr. V, there is no way I would probably still be in manufacturing my widgets, I guess.
And so those days when you were, you have such a great, peaceful, positive disposition, were there any days where you were sitting in the hospital and waiting for scans and what have you, that you sort of thought, why me? Like, why is this happening to me? I'm a great mum, I've got a great business, great husband, I'm a pretty bloody good human. Why is this happening to me? And quite frankly, why won't it go away?
Well, you know what? I don't think I ever thought that ever. In fact, I think the only thing I ever thought was, thank goodness it is me, and thank goodness it's not one of the kids, or thank goodness it's not Angus, because I think it's much easier to deal with something yourself than to have to go through the emotional wrangling of how somebody else is dealing with it. So I think I was almost happier that if someone had to have it, that it would be me.
So then what's next for Dr. V? What's next for Kimberley?
Oh, well, Dr. V, we acquired another brand. So we acquired the Tonic brand of protein shakes and protein bars. So we're just trying to sort of chug or digest that acquisition and get all the back end processes and everything sort of all working smoothly, and then really try and build or continue building that brand and maybe take it internationally. So we've just done a few little export trade fairs, and I think we've had some really positive response. We've seen a few orders trickle in, so perhaps now the world. Yes. Well,
if you can conquer what you've conquered, there's no doubt in my mind that the world is looking pretty fine for you. So on the same premise of Dr. V energy drinks, is it the same sort of health herbs with the protein and the...
Well, this, I guess, not so sort of traditional herb focused. It's much more protein focused, and then sort of I guess you call it a sort of sports nutrition product, I would say.
So can we get our hands on it yet or no?
Yes.
Oh, you can?
Yes. So it's here in Melbourne. So it's all over Sydney. I guess it's in most gyms, and our protein bars are in health food shops and Coles, and our drinks are in, they'll be in a store near you, I'm sure.
So we just Google Dr. V to find out more.
Yes, or tonic. Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Kimberley, for sharing and being here so open and honest and really laying yourself out bare. These conversations are never really easy, but I know that anyone who's listened or watched has connected with you, and you've definitely provided some inspiration and positivity. So thank you so much for being here, Kimberley.
Well, thank you, Viv.
And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.